like trying to learn how to read. Here, the whole family is trying to learn how to read. Reading was important because reading sets you free, really.
Yes.
And that was important for my dad to portray in his mural. He did the very first one at Texas Southern University. All the art students had to do a mural when they graduate. So he did the first one. He left from Houston and came here to teach in Fort Worth. He taught at James E. Gwynn across the street. And then he went to Dunbar High School, and then finally he became the first black administrator at the Tarrant County Junior College. So, but the center of his mural became a saying from Booker T. Washington: "Cast down your buckets, your buckets where you are." I mean, hey, instead of trying to go over here, let's just stay here where we are and settle ourselves, get what we can from this land, get what we can from going to school, and make something special of ourselves. And that's what they did. At the end, you'll see that with our education, you can see everybody trying to learn here, they were able to become future lawyers, judges, doctors, scientists, and building spaceships and the whole 9 yards. So education was the key. And that's it. That's my dad. He died in 2017, and yesterday was his 98th birthday.
Thank you very much. This picture is representing one of our other art legends. Our art legends were Dr. Abraham Benjamin Washington and Mr. Othello Beck. This is a picture that represents Juneteenth celebration of 1910. This is perhaps Mrs. Stark's favorite photograph. At some point, we intend to actually bring this photograph alive. He was a post office employee in Dallas, and he'd done a lot of work in terms of making contributions in the community, as well as leaving a gallery in Dallas currently. And we're hoping that his wife should come today.
Here she is, baby, right here.
Oh, here you are. I'm not mentioning.
But you gave a great explanation of Othello's work.
Please.
I'll just make a couple of comments. What inspired Othello to do this piece was Juneteenth. And with his travels through the South, he learned about Juneteenth. He learned about the celebration, and he wanted to depict the way we had to celebrate when the holiday came about. We were not allowed to go on the park to have our picnics. There was no public place we could go. So during the era of the early South, we celebrated by going to land, vacant lands along the highway where we could feel free, or some owners that our families worked for, some of the white landowners would let us celebrate on their land. So he came up with that idea on what it would have been like during that time when we could not celebrate at public facilities. There were really no black parties at that time either. So that's just a short summary.
Thank you so much. Our third legend is our living legend and founder of Stepping Into Destiny, Mrs. Black. Would you come and explain your work?
Hello. I paint under the name Wheeler Root. And what I try to do is immortalize your ancestors. I think that everyone should pay tribute to their ancestors. And in so doing, I created some pictures that I'd like to share with you. This is my Aunt Mandy and her husband, Rufus. Rufus was an infantryman in World War I who came home to let everybody see him in his uniform. And my Aunt Mandy worked for the wealthy whites in Harrison County in Marshall, Texas. One of them gave her what she's worth. And as you can see, it's too large for her. But she was really pleased when what we call the mean old picture man came by to take this picture. So she put on her husband's hat. And so there you have her posed, showing that he belongs to her. And we used to distribute these to everybody in our family. We always gave presents at Christmas, and we were told not to spend more than $20 of them. And there were for them, and there were two founders, by the way, of Stepping into Destiny Arts. The other one was my first cousin, James Weissner, who is suffering from dementia, so he isn't here. But the gift was given to both of us, and we decided that we would share it. And he also would do these pictures. Then we would go out to Kinko's at that time, get them copied, and get us some construction paper, and we would give them to our relatives for Christmas. But my aunt, who passed away, that was our parents' oldest brother and sister, okay, left us $25,000 in her will for us to be able to market and protect our art. But we decided that there were a lot more people who were young, struggling artists who needed to have the same protection. So that's the way we started Stepping into Destiny Arts. Now, the other thing that I am, and God gave me this gift, I am the wife of a documented original Tuskegee Airman who has since passed from us. So I have a picture of his mother, and we call her Mother Marie. And Mother Marie has distinct pleasure of being not the mother of one documented original Tuskegee Airman, but two. Now, I'm in the process of painting the other one because somebody finally sent me a picture of him. But both Claude and Attrell Platt were documented original Tuskegee Airmen who lived at 1422 New York, which is right up the street in the heart of Terrell Heights, okay? So we wanted you to know about them. And this one I call my Tuskegee Airman because he was my husband. And when I painted this picture for him, somehow or another, he decided that he could sign it. Which gave him a really bad in the family. But I just came back and painted over it. He said to me, you shouldn't have done that because what's mine is mine and what's yours is mine, and I can sign anything. You would have had to know Claude to know how bad he was. But these are the three things that I did that way. And this is called Free at Last. And I did that when we had a 19th of June exhibition that was downtown in the City Hall, okay? And it's showing the blockade of the Bay of Galveston and the general on the ship, and of course the people leaving the plantations and coming away to get their land. So we call this Free at Last.
Hi everyone, my name is Danielle. This is my piece right here. I was inspired to do this from last year's 12 Freedoms Gained art exhibition. Before that exhibition, I didn't know a whole lot about Juneteenth. I learned about it maybe 2 years prior to the show, but my brother just told me that it was the day that all the slaves were free, and we didn't go past that. So when I found this art exhibition, I decided to do my research. And upon research, it was just the emotions that I felt, from not learning about it in school, from it not being until I was 23 years old that I finally did actually learn more about it, and having the amazing opportunity to be in the art show, that I tried to channel my feelings here. I started off just wanting to depict the cotton field in some way. That's really how it began. And as I started looking at the cotton field, I guess I started to get this type of anger towards the whole situation. So that's why you have the rip here. But then when I ripped that open, I don't know, it was just this peaceful moment where I was like, okay, yes, we had that past, but here's all the new things that we have, the right to have children and to name children, the right to marry, the right to vote, the right to own land and a home. So I just really wanted to try to figure out a way to depict what Juneteenth means to me in a more peaceful way. So So that's pretty much it that I have for this piece.
That won Best of Show.
This picture is, I'm gonna tell you 3 things about it. One, it was, God gave me an assignment to reflect what Jesus came to do. And one of the things that Jesus came to do was to set the captives free. So this one reflects that. The other thing is this hand represents the hand of God. And I'm going to tell you exactly how this came about. We were given an opportunity to do a Juneteenth exhibit in the downtown Central Library. And here again, they censor their artwork. My piece that I originally submitted, the president, Mr. Johnson, had the privilege of telling me it was unacceptable. They took my piece out of the show. So I was challenged to come up with something that would be acceptable. This glass that's in this hand is something that I already had because my friend and I, Tanya Starks, were praying, and we were praying for things to be broken and for people to be able to be set free. We were praying. I chose to use the very best crystal that I had in my house and break it symbolically to have things broken up in families, in friends, and in our nation. So that's why this glass is chosen for this particular picture. This picture represents, when we were doing our research, we found that by divine design, God freed the African Americans simultaneously along with the Passover of the Jews. It was during Passover season, April 10th, that the proclamation was signed, thereby allowing us to be free. So you have Passover that was happening at the same time that we were actually free. So that's divine design. And you should know that there are no coincidences in time. And if you take this and put it back together, then you do have Jesus who came to set us free. These 2 artists are not here. This is Mr. Demetrius Cotton. He's a retired 30 years from teaching art in the Dallas ISD, and that's why he's not here, because he lives in Dallas and he's quite busy. He's also a pastor. But this picture represents sort of a collage of the things that happened during the slaves being free, the proclamation, the angels in heaven rejoicing, the soldiers that were lost their blood and sacrificed their lives, the thing that made us property, which was basically we were tools to be used to yield the crop of cotton, and then of course the freedom that came with the ship. That's Demetrius Cotton. This one was also in our last Juneteenth exhibit, and you have the family sitting on the steps. And one of the things that impressed me about this particular picture is that one of the elements of a family that's missing is the husband. You don't see the father in this picture. And unfortunately, for many of our black families, that's exactly what happened. Either you could assume that it was a point in time where he had to go and find work and he was just not available, or you can just assume that there was no father because there were single family parents in families. But you see that there. These are Mrs. Tony. And this began the series of the freedoms that were gained as a result of our
12 freedoms gained. That was our theme, 12 freedoms gained. We had a show on just 12 freedoms gained. So this depicts some of the things that was listed under that. You had a right to marry. So I just made up some people and just drew that out of my head. And at a spur of the moment, because Tanya kind of pushed me to do it. So I did this. 12 freedoms gained was the right to marry. And that was why I put this in. And it says, the two became one and one. The mystery of marriage by God's grace and wisdom creates the smallest unit of a nation. Then the cycle of life begins to circle around and around again and again. Okay, now this one was a long time ago, and I think some of you probably remember that we could not go to Forest Park. It was only on the, I believe it was the 19th of June, and it's 1963 that when Johnson did the proclamation again, and so we were able to go to Forest Park, and these are all the blacks, and I just made these people up and put my impression of the Forest Park from what I remember a long time ago when I used to go when I was a kid, and I would go out to the Forest Park. It wasn't like it is now, but that was the way I pictured it. I know we had the rides and the ticket machines and the zoo and all that was there, so I put them together so you can know that this is the Forest Park. This is my version of Forest Park. And now we can go to Forest Park and just enjoy ourselves anytime we want to. Haven't time change? Okay. And going on over. These are my paintings as well. This is the right to vote and courtesy. Well, this is courtesy writing. This painting tells the story of Lenora Rolla and Leon McKnight. Together they taught courtesy writing in their historic Stop 6 neighborhood back down over on
Off of Rosedale.
off of Rosedale. Yes, it is. Okay. At that time, African Americans had to pay a toll tax and sign in courtesy the voting from the order to vote. And this is what I just, out of my head, just drew, and I got Nora Raleigh back there. And this is why I have this painting, teaching them how to write. And this is the right to praise God. To hear the little children sing, let us treasure as precious the right to pray, praise, and worship God and pass it on to our children. Out of my head. Yes, that's the right. Okay, and this is my grandmother. This was a rock in my family. Now this is a picture of my grandmother. It was taken from a picture that my mother had, and it was just an old picture. You know how it was just kind of got, but anyway, I put it back together and I drew it. And I gave it to my mother on Mother's Day, and it made us so happy. She was so happy to have it, and she kept it until today she passed. And I got it from my sister. It was in her house. So I just borrowed it, though. She can still have it. But I borrowed it from my sister, and her name is Mamie Thomas, and she was the rock. She taught me the words of prayer. She prayed all night long for us, and like I said, she was the rock. And Mama knew God. And so she was the one that held us all together. And I would wonder why she'd pray all night long and sometimes be praying. And now, I'm glad she did, because now I know how to pray. She's gone, but I have to pray myself. And so I thank God for my grandmother. And this is a picture of Sojourner Truth. Tanya told me, so we got to have a picture of Sojourner Truth, Tony. Now you can do it. And it was a short notice, and she told me to do these things. And I get kind of angry at her, but I'm glad she pushing me. Yes, she does it. And I said, oh gosh, I got all these paintings, but still I got to paint another picture. Here I go again. So anyway, I got out there in my garage. I do it. I have another area. I had an area, but now I got another area in my garage and cooler out there or something. But anyway, I got out there and I painted Sojourner Truth the best way I could. That's Sojourner Truth, my version.
This is a picture by Rita Jo Sanders. She's one of our members, but she's currently in Los Angeles doing some work. She's a very talented artist. She does a lot of interior decorating and changing of homes and stuff like that. Her family done that for years. This is a picture of her aunt, her real aunt. She did say that her aunt did have flaming red hair. And her aunt was sort of the family storyteller. She told them stories about what happened. And as you can see in here, you see the symbolic red soda water. You see the people working in the cotton field. You see the artistic stylizing of the cotton balls here in the stars. And she made her aunt, whose name was Willie Mae Jenkins, larger than life. because that's kind of the way she saw her. And you can see the people, the details and the people beneath her. And one of the things that we, as black people, even history itself was told by someone. Stories were passed down. And in the African culture, you call this person the griot. And so this is what her aunt was to her.
There's a knee-high color there.
Yeah. This, where is Mr. Ron Davis? I mean, Ron. Ron is here, and this is a picture that he's a wood carver. And so this is an image that he done. Tanya had asked him to do this. This is actually my neighbor that lives across the street from me when he was young. And so he done this for her as a gift for her. And he's here, Ron Davis. He's big, tall, with the white hair. This is a picture by Mr. Larry Evans, and it also depicts his version of Sojourner Truth. And if you can see some of the elements of her being stylized as a woman of vision, I think he saw as he saw in her. Ms. Stark's dress here. This is, when we were doing our research, this is a picture that Ms. Starks found. And one of the things that we're honoring is Memorial Day. This was the first Memorial Day of black people, and there were, when it was May 1st, and there were over 1,000 children in this parade, and they had took and buried some of our black soldiers and put them in decent graves. And so this was symbolic of the time that they done this. These are elements of the time history that Mrs. Starks had done when she was doing her research on the Juneteenth, and some of the statistics that she found, which we will all hear in the Readers Play that we'll be doing today. This is actually a real live Buffalo soldier. He resides in Dallas. This is a photograph that she took of him. This is her tribute for Mr. McDaniel as one of the 101 soldiers. He was one of the ones that stood with the soldiers when they protested and were not allowed to go into the officers' camp. And so this is what she done, which summarizes the things that he achieved as he was doing his military service. These are photographs that she took of she used to call him her hero, Mr. Platt, which is Miss Platt's husband. She really likes this one because this is a picture of Mr. Platt, who she sees as a warrior, looking at Nelson Mandela, and she calls it the warrior to warrior.
This is Dr. Robert McDaniel. I had the pleasure of meeting him Juneteenth, and I got to sit down and talk with him. I was in the military, and he was in the military, and I knew the movie that George Lucas had made called Red Tails about the Tuskegee Airmen. So I was a little starstruck by him, and he is such a godly and humble man, and he would just sit and talk to you like you were his next door neighbor. I just really cared a lot for him, and so. I got to know him a little bit at Juneteenth, and I went to his birthday party in February that he had, and I told him, I said, if it's okay with you, I'm doing a portrait of you. And I said, I'm going to age regress it a little bit, because I wanted to show him his vibrant. He was on a walker, he was 96 years old, but I wanted to show him vibrant because he's a legend, he's a hero. And so he got to see this almost when it was done. I had not put the pinstriping in that was in his suit, but he liked it. And his son said this was a spitting image of him when he was in his 50s and 60s. And he was valedictorian of his class at IM Terrell in 1940. And consequently earned a scholarship to Prairie View University, which was interrupted in 1943 when he was drafted into the military. And became part of the 477th. Like she had mentioned earlier, he was one of the 101 that stood as one to protest. The base commander was a complete bigot. They actually got rid of him, who would not allow the black officers to go on the officers club. And one thing that she didn't say is that, but because of these men standing up to that oppression and inequality, they led to the desegregation of the militaries. And so he's just more than a war hero. He's a very brave man of integrity, godly man, and it was just a privilege to have known him. He passed away a couple of weeks after I finished the painting.
This year.
Yeah.
This year, yeah, it broke my heart because I really thought a lot of this guy.
She has something to share about Mr. McDaniel, Dr. McDaniel.
Oh, please, go ahead.
Well, I was a student at James E. Gwynn, and he was our principal. But never in all of my years of knowing him did I know he was a Tuskegee Airman until about 6 years ago when the Iron Turtle Alumni Association honored Tuskegee Airmen, and I met Mr. Platt and all the ones that were still living in Fort Worth. So that was quite a surprise to me that he was such a famous person, and I didn't know that.
And you
He was so humble.
were a student.
And I was also a student of Mr. Abraham Washington at James E. Quinn as well.
Good, it's a small world.
I'm going to interject here and say that one of the reasons why nobody ever talked about that is because a lot of the officers left with a degree of shame as it related to making this stand. Because
I found that out later.
Yeah,
That's why
because
he
they
never
were
said anything.
dishonored. So they didn't go around talking about it. But President Clinton restored that back to them.
Some of them posthumously.
Let me say one thing about this, and then I'm sorry, I didn't want to. No, go ahead. But God gave me a gift, and for 42 years, I followed the documented original Tuskegee Airmen around the country and to other countries, telling their story. And I want you to know that all of them were humble when it came to whether or not they talked about what had happened to them. But I promised Robert T. McDaniel's wife that I would make sure that he told his story just before she passed away, because she was my sorority sister. So I took both Claude and Robert all around Fort Worth to tell their story to the children that they told me they weren't going to tell. I want you to know I told them if they didn't, I would beat them with a wet noodle. This is going to be the shortest part of it. There came to be a time when somebody called me and said that I should get all the Tuskegee Airmen in Fort Worth ready for a surprise that was going to be in Dallas, and a limousine was coming. And so I called Matt and told him to get on his best dressed suit because we were going over to get a surprise. He said, look, I'm tired of these burn trailers. I'm not doing another one. I said, but you don't know what the surprise is. You might be disappointed if you don't go. And besides, he said, I don't want to hear what Hester, you promised Hester. I said, just put your suit on, sweetie, and let's go. I'm making Claude go, so you have to go too. He said, let me tell you something. If I get over here, and that's another trailer, I'm gonna beat you with a wet noodle. That you beat us with all the time. So we got to Dallas and got to North Park, and there were so many policemen that I decided they didn't have any more anywhere in Dallas. It was that bad. And so we went in and they took our cameras, they took our phones, they scanned us, and they set us down. And so after a while, all the policemen lined each side of the theater. And everybody was looking around and said, why are so many policemen in here? Well, all of the players in the Red Tails came in. Oh. Okay, that was the surprise, but it gets worse. And then a stage came Oprah Winfrey. And she asked all of them to come down. And she kissed every one of them. I don't think they washed their faces for me. It was that bad. So I said to Mac, who had told the chauffeur that he had to take him right back home, I said, you planning on leaving? He said, oh, shut up. So she made arrangements for a banquet in one of the fancy houses in North Park, and they had a most delightful time. But I thought you'd like to know that, because all the other Tuskegee Airmen wrote and said, "Why didn't somebody tell us? We would have come too."
That was very good. Justin.
My name is Justin Simmons, and I am from Muskogee, Oklahoma. So at first I didn't know anything about Dr. Claude Platt. What inspired me to paint this painting, the title is Tuskegee Airmen. What inspired me to do this piece was someone asked me to do it last year. And like I said, I didn't know much about Dr. Claude Platt, but I did know his wife. So I asked for my blessing. I asked the blessing to do the piece, and she also offered to give me as much images that I needed. But sad thing was I was running out of time. So I had to pick up as much as I could. It was quite difficult at first because most of the images were black and white. So I had to do a vote at my family house and came out with the colors, and came out well. And my wife also said it was a certain anointment after I did the piece. And this is all I got. And then I'm starting making prints.
All right. Very nice. It's ready.
That's the whole point.
Extend a hearty welcome to you all for our M4 art exhibit, closing art reception. We're looking forward to having a good time, and we just pray that you'll be blessed by what all will go for today. We thank up all our artists that have presented thus far. And at this time, I want to present our curators for the art exhibit, which is Tanya Starks. Amen. And Cynthia Lee Jackson. Amen. Thank you. Good evening. I'm so glad you took time out of your precious day today to come and experience something extremely different, new, and delightful. Are you excited that you've met famous people? You know, the unfortunate thing about us as people is that we don't realize what's happening. Because as you go through life, you encounter different people, you see different circumstances and situations, and you don't know that this is going to become a part of history. But today, you are among people that are trailblazers and that will be making history. Consider yourself privileged. Ms. Platt, who's one of our oldest members, was able to tell you about an experience of her husband where they were able to meet real movie stars that were portraying people that were actually a part of the history. They were reenacting what they actually done. So look around, see the faces, and if they tell you an artist, you better put out a piece of paper and get an offer. This lady here had the privilege of marrying someone that's in a history book. That's exciting. This woman over here has the privilege of marrying a man that's in a history book. This woman right here is married to a man that has written many of books and certainly will be in a history book. Look around. See who you are among today. We're so happy. Juneteenth is one of the themes that we're celebrating because we're about freedom. Freedom. Freedom is a word that was divinely given to us. And this morning, God gave me a word for freedom. The F means that we are free. We are divinely created so that we can do one thing. We are superior to everything that God created because we have the ability to make choices. And with that F, you have the ability to do what? Reason. Educate yourself. And then you have the privilege to execute the purpose. The purpose by which God created everybody for something. He did not make a mistake when you were born. You're here to do something. And it's up to you to figure out what it is. It's your fault on Judgment Day if you fall short. That's the essence of freedom, is to be able to execute the dominion that God gave man. That's what we're here for. We're free to choose. And I'm hoping that we will all make the right choices. Today, Ms. Starks told me that this is something that a little song that she's been singing for 3 decades. I can't imagine anybody doing anything for 3 decades. But she's been singing this little song. And today, she's going to have someone come and step to the words of the song that she's been singing for 3 decades. It's an original song. I hope that you will lead with the words in your heart and in your mind, because it will help you understand what to do when you determine that you are free and how you're going to use your freedom. The young group that she has gotten to do this, for whatever reason, they're called JC Steppers. Agency. So, would you young people stand, please? All right, so you guys want to take your position?
So the next thing on the program, we welcome you as the curators, and we want to say this art is about a lot of things which you got a chance to see, and now we're going to have a closing program so we can kind of narrow in a little bit more, especially since this is the month that Ella Mae Shamley's library was just opened. It was 11 years ago. I believe it was June the 18th that it officially opened. We're sitting in a classroom for 2 schools. Little Tommy Tucker and Our Lady of Mercy, Our Mother of Mercy, was right here, and it's been restored. And so in honor of a lady that fought very hard for the right for the African American to be privileged to read, we really want to celebrate our heritage. And we have a word about Juneteenth coming from you, coming to you right now from JC Steppers Agency. Thank you so much.
What's the word?
All slaves are free.
What's the word?
All slaves are free.
What's the word?
Freedom.
What's the word?
Unity.
You got to hear the word, hear the word, hear the word. You got to see the word, see the word, see the word. You
And this year, as we look back at Juneteenth, we thought it's very important to take advantage of the freedoms that we have gained. And we're going to do a little fun thing. Ross and Alcie, are you about ready to come? We're going to teach you a new word. It's called Sankofa. And we call this part of the program, Come, Go, Sankofa. Come, go, Sankofa. A new word from Africa. Ready? Go.
Come, go, Sankofa with me. Come and go, Sankofa with me. Come and go, Sankofa with me. Little sister, come and go, Sankofa with me. Come and go, Sankofa with me.
What's Sankofa?
Looking back. Looking back.
Reach back and get. Okay, get what?
Your history.
Reach back and get what?
Your history.
All right.
That's the same company.
Amen. We would now have a prayer about Beverly Lawson for the Christ.
Lord, I thank you. Let's bow our heads. Lord, I thank you for who you are. We celebrate who you are. Lord, you're the most creative person I've ever seen, ever known, ever been with. And Lord, thank you that you've made us creative. You have made us in your image and you've made us creative. And I pray a blessing on every person here today. I pray your blessing of creativity, your blessing of freedom, your blessing of loving each other, no matter who we are, what color we are, what nationality we are, what who we are. Lord, we just thank you that you love us just like we are. And we thank you, Lord. We pray your blessing on this time today. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen.
Thank you again for coming. As we conclude the program, we're going to, or as we continue with the program, we're going to do a Reader's Theater in celebration of the freedom to read and write. And we're going to go back in time and Sankofa and learn about what happened the last year of the Civil War. Does anyone know what was the last year of the Civil War? Some say 61, 65. It was 1865. So we're going to travel down the time back to 1865, and we're going to be doing a Reader's Theater. And I want to ask you to give our readers a round of applause. And we've asked you to come and go back in time with us, come go Sankofa with us. Let's reach back and learn about what happened in 1865, the year that Juneteenth came. Juneteenth came in 1865, the last year of the Civil War. Most people know one thing about Juneteenth, and what? What is the main thing we know about Juneteenth? Freedom. We want to teach you some new things about Juneteenth. It wasn't only a fact that the slaves in Texas were the last to know, but we're going to learn a few more things about what happened that year that Juneteenth came, when the last 250,000 African slaves were transformed and they became African Americans. When you change that slave behind African to American, that means freedom, rights, privileges. And as we're looking back, I think it's about 160 some years since Juneteenth came, we want to just take a stroll back and remember where we came from and what happened when we came. I think we're almost ready. Let's give them one more round of applause.
My name is January 17, 1865. General Sherman South Black family.
Sankofa is West African for the concept of what Americans call history. It literally means reach back and get it. Today we will reach back into time and get nuggets from 1865. We will get an African-American panoramic view of the last year of the American Civil War. 1865 was the year that a proclamation finally reached Texas slaves. On June 19, 1865, or Juneteenth, is when finally the words "all slaves are free" officially and militarily were proclaimed. This was a time when all citizens of Texas were made aware that all slaves are free. Let us start with January 16, when General Sherman issued Special Field Order Number 15. Field Order 15 confiscated 400,000 acres of land to redistribute to newly freed black families in 30-acre segments. The land extended from Charleston, South Carolina, to St. Johns River in Florida, including 30 miles of Georgia's mainland and the Georgia Sea Islands.
Let the settlement of black families begin. I encourage Freeman to join the Union Army to help sustain newly won liberty. I have designated Inspector General Rufus Saxton to police the land and work to ensure legal title of the property for new black settlers. I authorize the Army to loan mules to the newly settled farmers.
February 1865, Delaney appointed.
In February 1865, Martin Robeson Delaney became the first black major appointed to the United States Army. Delaney was brilliant, educated, and outspoken. He was accepted and admitted to Harvard. Delaney was born free in Charlestown, Virginia. He knew of his African ancestry back to the Mandingo tribe of West Africa in the territory we now call Liberia. Delaney was a physician and a publisher as well as an officer.
I am Martin Delaney. I met with President Lincoln at the White House and discussed African-American officers commanding African-American troops. I was commissioned as a major in the 104th Regiment of the United States Colored Troops. I served until the end of the war, becoming the highest-ranking African-American officer in U.S. history at that time. I later served in the Freedmen's Bureau under Otis Oscar Howard as a field officer.
By March 3rd, 1865, Freedmen's Bureau was established.
March 3rd, the Freedmen's Bureau was established by Congress. The Bureau was mandated by the U.S. government to help freedmen with such issues as provisions, clothing, and fuel as being needful for immediate and temporary shelter. The Bureau was for destitute and suffering refugees, freedmen and their wives and children. The Bureau provided education, job assistance, and helped to contact displaced family members. Upon completion of his duties as Union General, General Oliver O. Howard was appointed director of the Freedmen's Bureau. He would become the founder of Howard University by 1867.
I am Oliver O. Howard, and I believe that the colored man is entitled to all the rights of our common humanity, and that includes all the civil and political rights and privileges that other men enjoy. I admit that the black man differs in particular, but I deny that he is on that account to be regarded as belonging to an inferior type of humanity. I demand that he should not be excluded from business or places of amusement, schools, colleges, seminaries, or benevolent associations.
This is Martin Luther King. Hear me, freedmen, get up, form a community, get all the lands you can, grow as many vegetables as you want for your families. Now, on the other part of the land, cultivate rice and cotton.
Monday, April the 3rd, 1865, General Wetzel and the 25th Colored Corps captured Confederate capital.
The fourth quarter of the Civil War began on April 1st, 1865, when Union forces overthrew the Confederates at the Battle of Five Forks. Union forces vanquished Confederate defensive lines at the Third Battle of Petersburg on April 2nd, as Robert E. Lee led the valiant army of North Virginia West. By mid-May of 1865, General Weitzel and approximately 13,000 colored troops of the 25th Corps would accompany General Weitzel to Texas, where he joined the Army of Occupation and remained until January 8, 1866.
Hello, General Wetzel. I'm from the newspaper. Major General Wetzel, tell me about your N-words and what's been happening since you arrived here in Richmond.
Don't call my soldiers that. They are soldiers. They are astute, fit, and brave as any soldier or more. Their race is colored or military.
Yes, sir.
Now then, when we arrived, rebels in Richmond had deserted in droves. The capital of the Confederacy was in flames. On the morning of April 3rd, the men of the 25th Colored Army Corps came. We took Richmond, the Confederate capital. The 4-year goal of the Union war effort had finally been achieved. Hundreds of thousands of Union and Confederate noble and brave lives had paid in blood, tears, and lost lives. Shortly before noon, we planted the American flag to the music of the Battle Hymn of the Republic. I then had a telegraph message sent to Washington, D.C. War Department. It said, "Richmond has fallen." The next day, President Abraham Lincoln visited Richmond. As the new military governor, I took President Lincoln to the office that had been Jefferson Davis's office. Sinking down into one of Davis's easy chairs, President Lincoln simply asked for a glass of water. When I asked him about how I was to handle local residents, formal officials, and rebel troops in the conquered city, Lincoln declined to dictate specifics to me. Instead, he said, if I were in your place, I'd let them up easy, let them up easy. President Lincoln and I took a carriage ride through the city. Many white residents were sank on their knees and crying for all of their losses. But the city's blacks danced and shouted, hugging each other. Some Negroes fell to their knees to thank President Lincoln. However, the president exclaimed, "Don't kneel to me, that is not right. You must kneel to God only, and thank Him for the liberty you will afterward enjoy."
Sunday, April the 9th, 1865, the Civil War ends at Appomattox, Virginia.
General Robert E. Lee surrendered to General Ulysses S. Grant. Lieutenant Colonel Eli Samuel Parker from the Iroquois Native American tribe and adjutant to Ulysses Grant wrote most of the final draft of the Confederate surrender terms at Appomattox, Virginia. We, the undersigned prisoners of war, belonging to the Army of Northern Virginia have been this day surrendered by General Robert E. Lee, CSA, commanding said Army to Lieutenant General U.S. Grant, commanding armies of the United States, do hereby give our solemn parole of honor that we will not hereafter serve in the armies of the Confederate States or in any military capacity whatever against the United States of America. After the surrender, Robert E. Lee approached Parker and shook his hand. He said, "I am glad to see one real American here." Parker replied, "We are all Americans."
Monday, April the 10th, 1865, Passover or Pesach.
April 10th was on the 5th night of Passover, 1865. It was also Good Friday. It was not happenstance, but providence that the Festival of Freedom, commemorating the Israelite exodus from slavery, intersected in the seasons of the Confederates' defeat in April 1865.
Friday, April 14th, 1865, Lincoln is assassinated.
President Lincoln was shot and assassinated. United States Secretary of War at the time, Edwin Stanton, said, "Now he belongs to the ages." For America and the newly emancipated African American community, the coming years will be marked by uncertainty, tragedy, and complexity. Frederick Douglass concluded, "Verily, the work does not end with the abolition of slavery, but only begins."
May 1865, Sojourner Truth boldly confronted segregation on a horse-drawn streetcar in Washington, D.C., just 1 month before freedom came to Texas of African slaves.
In 1865, Sojourner Truth lived at the Freedmen's Village in Arlington, Virginia. After 5 miles from Washington, D.C., she worked for the National Freedmen's Relief Association, instructed and equipping people with many new skills for newly freed Americans. While there, Sojourner Truth, Alexander Augusta, Senator Charles Sumner, and others had occasion to go to D.C., where they challenged the segregated streetcar system. One day, Sojourner signaled a streetcar, but neither the conductor nor the driver noticed her. Soon, another streetcar followed. Sojourner raised her hand again, but they also turned away. Sojourner then gave 3 cries. "I want to ride, I want to ride, I want to ride." Alarm seized the passing crowd of people. Carriages on the street stood still. The car was blocked. And before it could move on, Sojourner jumped aboard. Then came a great shout from the crowd. "Hey, hey," I mean, ha, ha, ha. Sorry. "She has beaten him." The angry conductor told Sojourner where to go or where he would put her out. Quietly seating herself, Sojourner informed the conductor that she was a passenger. "Go forward where the horses are, or I will throw you out," he said in a mincing voice. Sojourner told him, "I know the laws as well as you do." The conductor tried to fortify by throw off the car.
I filed assault charges against the conductor. He was dismissed from his job. Together, we made the freedom to travel count. We fought and won the battle to desegregate public transportation in Washington, D.C. in 1865.
Saturday, May 20th, 1865, Freedom Day, Tallahassee, Florida.
May 20th, 1865, Tallahassee, Florida, Freedom Day or Emancipation Day comes. Freedom Day is an event likened to the Texan Freedmen's celebration Juneteenth. General McCook and his men entered this capital As he entered the Capitol, they read and announced the Emancipation Proclamation. General McCook's announcement made freedom from slavery official and known to all in the state of Florida.
General Gordon Granger arrived in Galveston on Sunday, June 18th. Sources suggested he arrived on the flagship of the flotilla, the USS Fort Jackson, with 2,000 troops. They were possibly ferried to Galveston on the USS Columbia. On June 19th, Granger announced General Orders 3, 4, and 5. General Order 3 states all slaves are free. Finally, the last 7% of approximately 4 million African slaves became African American.
Wednesday, December the 6th, 1865. The 13th Amendment. The 13th Amendment was ratified and made slavery illegal in every part of the United States.
Sunday, December 24th, 1865. The Ku Klux Klan is born. Old hatred, as the saying goes, die hard. Lincoln stated both sides read the same Bible and prayed to the same God, constituting a nation divided not just by geography or interpreting the Constitution, but by the interpretation of sacred scripture itself. December 24, 1865. Ex-Confederate soldiers from a social group in Pulaski, Tennessee, called the Ku Klux Klan. And the Klan is in the loop.
All right.
So let it count, our final proclamation.
So let us be as Esquire, who understood the times and seasons. Let us establish Juneteenth as a time to remember the season when a paradigm shifted and African slaves became African Americans. They received liberty from 240 years of slavery in America. Let people throughout the world keep the celebration of 19th day of June yearly. For indeed, if one is chained, none are free. Let us remember the blood, sweat, and tears shed by black, white, Hispanics, and Native Americans from the African slave to become African Americans. Many nations fought for African Americans to have the right to live with dignity and freedom.
Let us lift up our heads with pride in our hands to our God, as we remember that Africa and African slaves brought substantial cultural substance to America. The American slave, with awe-inspiring fortitude for almost 250 years, produced great wealth and enlarged the gross national product of America most profoundly by God's grace. Let us remember how the last 7% of 4 million African slaves were liberated 2 months and 10 days after the end of the Civil War and became African Americans. Let us understand that this is our country, and we have done our good part to help build it to be great. Let us understand that when Juneteenth came, the new season of God set time of favor on America came, and all Americans got the double portion.
Let us remember, preserve, and treasure our liberties, to worship our God, to enter the holy covenant of marriage, to bear our own children, to name our children, to write our history, to keep and raise our children, to educate ourselves and our children, to live as persons and not property, to freely own property, to freely fight as noble soldiers, to vote and govern, become entrepreneurs, to bring life from the good earth for pleasure and life.
Let us enter into the freedom. Let us enter into the rest of freedom to be people delivered from the bondage of being property and of all of slavery's dogmas in this month.
Let us remember this time and season, which was turned from a season of sorrow to joy, and from mourning into a good day. By the great, wise, and sovereign hand of God, just laws and soldiers on land and sea who serve as covenant enforcing agents to bring liberty's light, God's great wisdom and power that caused man striving to work together and serve his will.
Let us make these days of
feasting and commemorating be full of joy and song. Let us use our gift to read and write and send cards of joy for God's gift of literary victory to one another.
Finally, as we send off or reach back and get the nuggets of heritage from the past, let us make America's fight for liberty and freedom from slavery count and count and continue to count by God's grace in our noble living.
So we exercised our right to read and to know our history. And we made sure that we have several generations here so they can know what happened in 1865. And we want to thank Faith coming forth and her mother to sing a song for us to kind of seal this message.
Faith chose this song because she's wanting to share that this is a message that she has learned, and now she's sharing it with her generation to hang on in there.
All right.
Thank you, Faith. And thank you, Margarita. What an awesome thing it is to see family. All right, we come to the part in the program where we want to give honor, and it's such a privilege to even reach back and remember where we came from and who helped to establish some things for us. We're going to start now with Cynthia Lee presenting the awards.
As Ms. Stark says, it would just not be right to stand before you today and not acknowledge the men that were the trailblazers that made the way for us to get here. With our past president, Mr. John Johnson, and Mr. Kenneth Carter, please come forward. For a whole decade, these men made sure that Juneteenth was, and Black History Month, was honored in the gallery here at the Chambers Library. Mr. John Johnson and Mr. Kenneth Carter. They're both artists, very good artists. And on behalf of Stepping Into Destiny and the armor bearer, we'd like to present this plaque to you, Mr. Carter and Mr. Johnson, for blazing the way and making it possible for us. This year, Stepping Into Destiny has 11 months in order to display our art for this complete year. And we owe that all to Mr. Carter and to Mr. Johnson.
And let's get one more picture with them. You guys give them a round of applause. 10 years.
Thank you. Yes.
Thank you, Ms. Stokes. My name is, like you said, Ken Carter. I'm an artist from studying under Dr. John Diggins, who was influenced so many people. I have a poem here I want to read right quick that covers everything that you've seen today.
All right.
It's a poem I wrote, and I like to always stress to young kids that it's not just a drawing, it's the education also. So I write, and if I can put it in a commercial, I will be writing for the Fort Worth Black News.
All right.
I'm
yeah.
way over, way over.
Okay, that's great.
And another announcement, I've just sent about 300 images to Washington, D.C.
All right.
They've contacted me twice saying they need some work from the artists in Texas. So we're the largest state, and I try to give them everything I got.
Great.
Okay, this poem is The Voyage. Of long ago, still waters disturbed, restless times and plunder and bondage. Silent screams in the night, removed from holy ground, ancestral lands. The voyage. Silent sails remain taut with winds of fury. Oh, so precious of cargo, carried to a new destination. Once was, never again. Brave warriors talk with death. Further, others salute the voyage, the new day of hope, the new way of survival. After all this time, silent tongues of our ancestors still whisper to me of the voyage. Thank you. One more announcement. We hope to have that plaque put up in the library somewhere, like they said, 10 years. Yes. We challenge other artists to do the same.
All right.
Thank you they are recipients of our Diligent Award. Texas Art Masters and Legend Award. As we mentioned earlier, we had 3. And we would like for Mrs. Stella Beck to come forward to receive our acknowledgement of her husband and the things that he was able to do to pave the way for Black artists. Do you have something you'd like to say? Yes.
Thank you, Ms. Lee. Ms.
Did you get a
Starr.
photo? Did you get a photo?
Not y'all can wait till she got finished.
Okay, all right. And members of the organization and the audience. I noticed the 12 freedoms as I was sitting there, and I particularly looked at 3. And this is art related. To do business. As artists that do business, you promote your work after you've done the work. Then you sell as you promote it, you're going to distribute it. But your name will always be on it. You will always own it, no matter where it goes, because your name is on it. To preserve that work, you will go down in history. So to do business, to own and to preserve that talent that you have contributed to our history. Othello Beck painted at a time when it wasn't popular to paint black folk. A lot of you young people don't know that. There was a time in our history during the Civil Rights Movement when we didn't see anything positive about African Americans on canvas, on paper. So he came out with, he studied in the library. The Dallas, when we were able to go to the library, he would go to the public library when we were able to after the Civil Rights Movement. But before then, it was a bookmobile. A lot of young people don't know about that either, but you're finding that history here, right here in this library. And from the bookmobile, there was always a library in the public school, the school in your community. So now we have great opportunities, great libraries. We don't have to just go to the library to be educated. We're not discriminated against in that manner. So we want to take advantage of those opportunities that our artists before us have made possible for us. And thanks again for the award. I really appreciate it.
And we have a medallion as well.
Excuse me. Come behind, come in. This is a smart camera, so they can read that.
Oh, you can read this? Okay.
I'm sorry. Smart camera. There we go. All righty, let's see here. 1 and 2 and 3. Thank you.
And one more presenting this one.
Yes. Yes, sir.
Last year, Othello Beck's art was in the 12 Freedoms Game exhibit. We didn't get a chance to give it to Mrs. Beck. So at this time, we want to present the 12 Freedoms Game Art Legend Art Master Award to Miss Othello Beck.
Can I get you to kind of hold your medallion?
Oh, the medallion.
Yes, ma'am. So we know what we're looking at. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
The living legend, Mrs. Irma Bonham Platt. And her artist name is E. LaRue. Ms. Platt, it gives me great pleasure to stand here before you and to recognize that if it were not for you, I would not know Tanya Starks. And this is the truth. You reach a point in life where you need help, and Ms. Platt is a very, I'm going to say strong woman, and you can only do so much with her. And God wanted her art gift to be resurrected and brought forth. So I had done all that I could do. And so along come little apostolic Tanya Starks and started urging her. She would diligently call her, "Are you painting today, Mrs. Platt?" Until the point that Miss Platt thought it was really an irritation and she must do something about it. So she did. But I'm grateful because not only did she uncover Mrs. Platt, she polished off Mr. Platt. And as a result of that, we have a Fort Worth chapter of the Tuskegee area. Amen.
Well, I'd just like to say Mrs. Platt is the founder of the Artists Guild. She brought the gifted, creative artists. Come and sit down and let's paint. Let's just paint. She's a visual artist. Although she does other things too. She works with several other mediums. But this lady started gathering artists together in her home and encouraged our gifts. And I like to volunteer, and I'm a good organizer, and she just put me to work. And so we thank God for Ms. Platt. We had about maybe 3 or 4 people, and now I think we have 25 artists, and we're doing curations in the library. We've got Ken and John Johnson leading the way, showing us, exhibit your art. Don't just paint it in your room and hang it on the wall. Exhibit it. And then she came and she encouraged. Now we've grown from about 3 or 4 to about 25.
Wow.
So we want to thank God for Mrs. Platt and John Johnson and Cynthia Lee for leading the Artists Guild called Stepping Into Destiny. And this is the mama right here.
Ma'am. Okay, here we go. Can you hold that straight? Thank you so much. Hey, supposed to cut corners. Thank you.
I just want to say, God has given me some wonderful children. I have one that He gave me because I birthed him, but He has given me so many more, and I call them all my guardian angels. And when I first saw Tanya the first time, we were having a celebration for the 19th of June. And I wondered who this young lady was that was dancing around with this camera boy. So I introduced to Cynthia. And then I told them that we were going to form an art organization for artists. And I have a first cousin who helped me do this. But I only wanted to plant the idea in them, and I was going to do what I always do, that is hide in the background. But they haven't let me do this, so I too tell God thank you and for all of my delightful children. And I sincerely appreciate this. Thank you very much.
I'm going to turn the mic over to Mrs. Starks, and she's going to continue the presentation. But I want to say this one thing. We're all God's created creatures. And if you have an urge to do something, do it. Because it's the Spirit guiding you. And you don't know what the results of what you have been told to do will yield. You just really don't. So just do it.
All right, we have one other art master that we want to acknowledge. It saddened me when I came to Fort Worth and started meeting artists, and a lot of the people from Fort Worth and Arlington and Dallas, they don't even know who any of the artists are among them. And the visual artists tell our stories. There was a time when our faces weren't even seen in books. And they started bringing our faces out and showing our culture. I think of Othello Beck's picture where the hair is being braided. They documented and celebrated and told our stories. I'm getting this. And And so we want to really, I want to encourage the audience, young and old, to take time and study. And if you don't know who are some of the artists that are telling our stories, and if you don't know any of our stories, start writing them, start searching for them. And I'm going to bring Dr. Carolyn Youssef forward to receive an award for another art legend. Come, Carolyn Youssef, Dr. Carolyn Youssef. Give her one more round of applause. We're really grateful for the legacy that she has brought forth in the arts for her father.
Okay, so my father, Abraham Benjamin Washington, was encouraged to display his artwork by Tanya. When my dad went to Texas Southern in 1952 and said he wanted to study art, they discouraged him. They said, nobody's gonna buy your art, you're not gonna get a job, you're not gonna make any money. So they encouraged him to become an art teacher. His teacher in art was Dr. John Biggers. And he also taught Miss Platt and somebody, Mr. Ken Carter, yeah. So Dr. Biggers encouraged all of their students to show their art in a mural. If you ever get a chance to go to Texas Southern University, go to Hannah Hall, walk through that building, and just experience all the creativeness of our people. It's just beautiful, amazing to see all our work. It's 3 floors of nothing but artwork. My dad's on the 3rd floor. He did the first mural. This thing died on me. No, it's still alive.
Yeah.
But my dad died on September the 14th, 2017. He didn't go about displaying his art until Miss Tanya brought it out. It's been my privilege, and my dad asked me to take care of his art, to help other people to see his art. And so with Tanya's help, that's what I intend to do. And I thank you for just bringing that out in me and bringing it out in him, how important it is to share our artwork. Thank you, Doctor.
You see, it's not extremely professional. We are family, but that's what we're trying to say. We're family. You got a picture of us?
Yes.
Our time is up, but we got one more award. Thank you, Carolyn. We got one more award. As you're hearing, I have to pull these artists to share. And we want to recognize Dr. Robert T. McDaniel. This was a collaboration of the 101, the mighty message of the 101 men that stood as one, that were Tuskegee Airmen. They fought against segregation, and one of our artists created this piece. It's 101 poppies in the shape of one. And we want to encourage everyone here, remember to unite, work together. That is our message. When we got free, we had to come together to form schools. We had to come together to do a lot of those 12 freedoms. Al Henderson, would you come forward, from the president of the Tuskegee Airmen chapter? We want to present an award to Robert T. McDaniel, a Tuskegee Airman, and we call this, what do we call this? This award is the award, a certificate of appreciation for the Excellence of Unity Award. Excellence of Unity. And let's gather together quickly. Circle up.
He's got a quick word.
A lot of you know that at the end of March, we celebrated Dr. McDaniel's homegoing. And before he went home, there are some people in this room that celebrated his birthday. So we were able to give him his flowers before, when he was still alive. And little did we know that was going to be his last birthday, Miss Starks, and others in this room. You know who you are, Miss Irma Platt, and others in this room. You know who you are. It was a very small celebration, but it was very special to him. And one last thing I want to share with you. Mr. McDaniel and Mr. Platt were artists. And I think Miss Irma Platt knows where I'm going with this. They sculpted young minds for decades of teaching and preaching about the Tuskegee Airmen.
That's our president of the Tuskegee Airmen, Al Henderson. Circle up, let's gather together, we gotta go. We love you and we appreciate you. Grab someone's hand.
Before everybody leaves, I have a free card for as many as you want. Right over here.
All right.
Hold on, just a little while longer. Hold on, just a little while longer. Hold on, just a little while longer. Everything's gonna be alright.
Father, we thank you and we praise you for the ability to come together and to remember where we came from and to know our heritage. We thank you for family. We thank you that we can name our mom and our dad. We can touch each other. Father, we thank you and we praise you for the preservation even of a school that our children went to. Father, we thank you and we praise you for this time together. And it's in Jesus' name we give praise and we give honor. Amen. Amen. Let it count.